You have a recording?
Sure.
Thank you.
Not that button. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Guys, there's handouts over here.
Our Mekayim, source sheets, it depends, whatever stream of Yiddishkeit you're coming from.
Your spiritual stimulus.
Okay, there's extra copies if anyone needs. Okay, so let's learn. So today, Bez Hashem, will be a little bit shorter than usual, I'm hoping, and this is more of a general introduction to a particular topic, which I'm hoping to discuss over the next few weeks, which is the ending of Shovavim. I haven't yet thought about, honestly, like what angle in Shovavim we'll take, but this morning is going to be more of a general introduction to a certain aspect of the concept of Shovavim. It's sort of circling it. We're not going to be, sort of talking about Shovavim itself, but here's the following idea. The weeks of Shovavim, again, it's an acronym for Shmais Ve'er Rabbi B'Shalach Yisrael Mishpatim. So the Arizal brings down in Shar Kavanis that there was an old minig to do tshuva and to fast and to have certain avodas during these weeks. Now, in the before the Arizal, it was unclear why, like what is so special about these weeks that there's such unique avodas of doing tshuva and so on. And so different paiskim pre-Arizal give different explanations. Maybe it's it's a long year, and it's like during the winter, right in the middle, there's not much Yom Tov and so on. So we want to, and when during that sort of lull period, a person can fall into certain spiritual traps. So we want to have a time of tshuva. There's all different reasons that are given. The Arizal says that that's all true, but al pi side in Pnimius, the explanation of why these weeks are significant in terms of tshuva and so on is because these weeks we read the Parshias talking about Yitzias Mitzrayim, the exile of Mitzrayim, Golus Mitzrayim, and Yitzias Mitzrayim, and said the Arizal, the inyan of Golus Mitzrayim and Geulas Mitzrayim is revolving around Yosef Tzadik, right? The goal, Yosef Tzadik was the one to first go to Mitzrayim, and the Gula sets in when he's forgotten, and the Gula comes when the secret code word that Yosef gave over of Pakid Bakadi is known by Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe is told to take the bones of Yosef with him. It's all revolving around Yosef Tzadik, and therefore said the Arizal, Yosef Tzadik, as we know, he's called Tzadik because of his inyan of overcoming the Nisayan of Eshes Potifar, which is related to Inyani Arayas of men and women, Kedusha Seinaim, Kedusha Zabris. And therefore, said the Arizal, again, we're not going to go into this Nekuda right now, but said the Arizal, therefore it follows suit that the whole inyan of Golus Mitzrayim and Geulas Mitzrayim is revolving around the Jewish people's, efforts in being mavar and being masakin and clarifying this Nekuda of Kedushas Yisrael, of the holiness of the Jewish people and how we are able to live up to the standard of Yosef Tzadik. Therefore, said the Arizal, if we lay in these parshias during these weeks, so that means that's our avodah during these weeks. It means that these weeks are shining with the inyan of Golus Mitzrayim, Geulas Mitzrayim, which is about Kedushas Yisrael, Yosef Tzadik, and so that's the avodah during Shovavim to work on that inyan of Kedusha Zabris, Kedusha Zeinayim, Yosef Tzadik, Dik Inyanim. Adkan, that's what the Arizal says. Now, again, what does Mitzrayim have to do with Kedusha Zabris, and what does it mean Kedusha Zabris? That's not what we're going to be discussing this morning. But the one thing that I just want to discuss for just even a little bit is this inyan of the part of what we see that the Arizal sort of makes it as an assumption. This is what we want to investigate for a few minutes. Is this Nakuda that the Parsha that we lay on Shabbos, the Arizal is assuming and he's revealing to us that the Parsha laying on Shabbos is significant to the entire week's Avodah. In other words, it's not okay. Listen. We lane every week. There's got to be one week that's going to be Parsha Shmais. It's just going to work out like that. No, so the reason it's not just a coincidence. If that's the laning of that Parsha of that week, that means that's the avodah. It means the week. In other words, there's a certain time in the year that we assume is shining with the light of Geulas Mitzrayim, of the whole story of Yitzias Mitzrayim, and that is what? That's Pesach. But comes the reason says that that's true in terms of like the cycle of Yom Tovim, that Pesach is shining with the inyan of Yitzias Mitzrayim. But said that Arizal, but there's another system, there's another way of looking at it, which is also based on the Parshas. So the Parshias, these weeks are also shining with the inyan of Pesach because of the fact that we're laying these Parshas in Chumash. So that's something that the Arizal is assuming, and that's what Shovavim is based on. So I want to investigate that, in halacha for a few minutes, and then in pnimis for a little bit as well. This Indian of the relationship between the Parsha and that Shabbos and that week. Okay, so it's like this: a little bit of basic background. The concept of laning on Shabbos, the whole concept of laning throughout the week. So we'll see in a second. There's a difference between a Bavli and the Rishalmi. Now you don't have this in front of you. I forgot to bring it down. But there's a Gemara in Megillah. This is where it begins. The Bavli. This is the Bavli's version of explaining the Indian of laning. So the Bavli at the end of Maseches Megillah says the following thing. It says in Pasuk, "Vaydaber Moshe es Ma'adei Hashem al Bnei Yisrael." Right, that Moshe Rabbeinu gave over to the Jewish people the Yom Tovim that the Rabbanah Shalom that spoke to him about. So Moshe Rabbeinu tells us about Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, and so on. Vaydaber Moshe es Ma'adei Hashem al Bnei Yisrael. Says the Gemara. From there, we see this Inyan that a person should lane the Inyan of Yontif on Yontif, and you should lane the Inyan of Rosh Chodesh on Rosh Chodesh. So when it says that Moshe Rabbeinu gave over the Yom Tovim to the Jewish people, contained in that is the concept of laning the Inyan of Yontif on every particular Yontif and so on. Says the Gemara, that's for Yom Tovim and Rosh Chodesh. What about Shabbos, like the weekly reading of Shabbos and Monday and Thursday? So it says the Gemara, that's a separate takana. That was a takana that also Moshe Rabbeinu instituted, but because he didn't want the Jewish people to go, or the community on a communal level, to go 3 days without learning. Okay? And because of that, every Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos, we have laning, because when you have laning Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos, it means that there's no 3 days without learning. So that's how the Bavli presents it. So you have laning on Yontiv, which is because there's an Inyan of laning, the Inyan of the Yoim B'Yoim. It's an Inyan of laning the topic of the time during the right time. So you should lane something about Shavuos and Shavuos B'Chulu. And laning throughout the weeks of Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos, that's because we don't want a person to go through, or the community to go through 3 days without learning. So every Monday you have lane Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos. That's how the Bavli presents it. Okay. Now, based on that formula, one can definitely make the argument that since the Bavli seems gives over the idea that why do we lane on Shabbos? So the Bavli is saying because we don't. It's just part of the same thing. We don't want to have 3 days without learning. So you're laning on Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos. So if you ask the Bavli in that mindset, is there anything specific about that this Shabbos you have to lane this particular parsha? Most likely not. The point is to learn. The point is that there should be a communal learning within every 3 days. Happens to be the way they set it up is that, it's a nice thing anyway. Let's go throughout the whole year, go through the whole cycle of Chumash. And Samela works out that every week you'll take on a different parsha. But is there be'etzem a kesher between that parsha and that week? You could definitely make the argument according to the Bavli, not. In Yontif, it's not like that, right? Because over there, that's a separate takana. Over there, the takana was Vaydaber Moshe es Ma'adei Hashem al Bnei Yisrael, that there's an Inyan of learning about the Inyan of Yontif on Yontif. So then, when on Pesach, for example, when we're laning the parshas about the halachas of Pesach, that's not just an arbitrary thing. Listen, we have to learn anyway as a community, so let's pick something that's relevant. No, that's not about just learning, and it happens to be we'll pick this randomly. This is the avoid. The avoid is that this on Yontif you have to learn something about Yontif. So if it's Rosh Hashanah, learn something Rosh Hashanah dik. On the average Shabbos, though, it's just a matter of making sure we don't go 3 days without learning. So it could have been any parsha. It happens to be. We also have a cycle of wanting to finish all of Chumash by the end of the year. You know what I'm saying? But the etzem is there a connection between this parsha and this particular week? You can definitely make the argument out like that. And this is something that we do find in some Rishonim. If you take a look at Marmukah number 1, so Marmukah number 1 is from the Sefer Ar Zerua. The Ar Zerua writes. Okay, the Ar Zerua writes the following thing. It's in Chelik Beisim and Tesvav. He's talking about the following situation. Let's say you have a community that, for whatever reason, did not have a Sefer Torah with them on a particular Shabbos, and they missed that parsha. Now, by the time the next Shabbos comes, they now have a Sefer Torah, but now it's already the next parsha. So should they make up last week's parsha? What do they do? So this is the question that many Rishonim deal with, but this is how the Ar Zerua presents it. Says Ar Zerua, again, Chelik Beisim and Tesvav. Says the Ar Zerua, even if you're going to, listen. Obviously, last week's parsha you missed it at that time, so you can't take a time machine to go back in time. So that is what it is. But it says the Arzarua, but there is an inyan of over the course of the year making sure that you laned all chumash. So at the end of the year, we don't want to miss out on any parsha. V'shleiludalik parsha achas b'netar. Says the Arzarua, we don't want to just miss a parsha and forget about it. L'fi kimiyamais Moshe Rabbeinu niskan likras atar parsha yasel ulashlim v'kol shana v'shana kedei lashmil la'am mitzvahs v'chukim. Because says the Arzarua, besides everything we saw in the Gemara Bavli, that Yontif, there's an end of reading on Yontif, and Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos, we don't want to go 3 days without laning. There is also another concept, says Arzarua, that over the course of the year, like I mentioned, over the course of the year, we want to have laned all of Chumash. There isn't anything like that, because we want everyone to hear all of the mitzvahs, all of Torah. So we have these, week by week, we want to be able to make sure there's no 3 days without learning. So no, if you missed it, you missed it. It is what it is. You can't take a time machine back. But over the course of the year, we also have this inyan that we want to have laned all of Chumash. Therefore, says the Arzarua, no, you missed that parsha last week, and now you're up to the next week. Don't skip the parsha, because if you skip the parsha, then it means over the course of the year you have a piece missing from Chumash, and therefore what you should do is make it up the following week and lane 2 parshas that week. And says the Arzarua, and let's say it was 2 weeks without laning a parsha, then the next week, then you get a Sefer Torah, lane 3 parshas, 4, 5, whatever it is. Because again, even though you're not fixing the mistake of going 3 days without learning, that you can't do. It is what it is. But at least to go over the course of the year, you should be able to say that you laned that as a community, you laned all Chumash. That's what the Arzarua says. The Ein L'Chaloimer, and says the Arzarua, and don't argue with me and say, but how could you make it up? Well, Maisa, that's not the Parsha Shavua. Right? In other words, the tzibur, let's say, missed Parshas Noach, and now it's coming to Parshas Lech Lecha. So it says Ezra, okay, so it's Parshas Lech Lecha lane, Parshas Noach and Lech Lecha. Maybe you're going to tell me, says Ezra, you're going to tie on me, but how can you lane Parshas Noach? It's not Parshas Noach this week. It's Parshas Lech Lecha. Says Ezra, that's not a taina. The Ein Lecha Loimer, don't say to me, Shekiv and Sha'avar as Man Kriyasa, that once Parshas Noach is gone, once that Shabbos is passed, Sha'avar as Man Kriyasa, Holchel Oisa Parsha, then finished. It's like, if on Pesach, the tzibur doesn't have a Sefer Torah to lane the inyan of the Parshas of Pesach, so now when it comes Shavuos, should they lane Pesach? No, because it's already finished. Says the Arzarua, maybe you'll tell me the same thing. If they didn't lane Parshas Noach, well, it's unfortunate they didn't have the opportunity to do it, but now it's already not Parshas Noach, it's Parshas Lech Lecha. Says the Arzarua, no, that's not a time. Lefisha ain't keva Parshias. Likras Parsha zu b'Shabbos zu v'zu b'Shabbos zu. Says the Arzarua, because it's not the same. There is no inyan of Parshas Noach. That this week is Parshas Noach, this week is Parshas. There's no such inyan. The inyan is that every week we want to make sure that there's learning, that there is Kriyas HaTorah. And we also have this inyan of over the course of the year finishing all Chumash. So that's how we arrange it, that every week has its own Parsha. But it's not like Be'etzem, that this week has to be Parshas Shmos, and next week has to be Parshas Ve'era, and V'chulu V'chulu. It doesn't have to be like that. Therefore, says the Arzarua, if you missed a Parsha, Sishkaferla, to lane it the next week. Doesn't make a difference. Why am I laning it the next week? Because I want to make sure over the course of the year I laned all of Chumash. But it's not Parshas Noach. Last week was also not Parshas Noach either. It just happens to be. That's the parsha that you're up to. So now you missed it, so you can make it up. So there's a rule again. That's just how it was arranged. The last week that we were doing Noach. If you missed this, so do Noach this week. So this is what the Arzarua is telling us, is that the side over here from the Arzarua is, again, similar to how the Bavli models it in a very simple way, which is that the laning of every particular Shabbos is not be'etzim connected to that Shabbos or to that week. That's just the way it is. Why are we laning on Shabbos? Again, to make sure we don't go 3 days without learning. But is there be'etzim a connection between that parsha and that week? Lav davka. This is all the Arzarua based on the Bavli. Now the Yerushalmi, however, has a different version of the reason why we lane on Shabbos. We'll skip a little bit. If you go to Maramukah number 4, okay? So this is a Yerushalmi, also Maseches Megillah. The Yerushalmi says like this, and you'll see the difference between the Yerushalmi's version of things versus the Bavli that I quoted in the beginning. Ma Hiskin Es Yisrael, says the Yerushalmi, why is it that Moshe Rabbeinu and the Tzaddikim were masakin for the Jewish people? Sheyukarim b'Torah b'Shabbosais u'b'Yom Tovim u'b'Rosh Chodashim u'b'Chol Shemayim. Says the Medrash, why is it that we lane on Shabbos, the Parsha HaShavua, and on Yontif we lane the ending of Yontif, and Rosh Chodesh, and Chol Hamoed, and so on. So to all that, the Yerushalmi says, Shenemar ve'yidaber Moshe es Ma'adei Hashem b'al b'nei Yisrael. That Moshe Rabbeinu gave over Yom Tovim and the holidays to the Jewish people, and that and contained in that pasuk means that Moshe Rabbeinu tells us to lane ending of Yontif and Yontif, Rosh Chodesh and Rosh Chodesh, Chol Hamoed and Chol Hamoed, and Shabbos, the Parsha HaShavua on Shabbos. That's what the Yerushalmi says. And Ezra Hiskin sheyukarim b'Torah b'beis v'hei u'b'Shabbos v'mincha. What about Monday and Thursday and Shabbos and Mincha also? Where's that coming from? It says the Yerushalmi that's a later takana instituted by Ezra Sefer. But what is the Yerushalmi saying? The Yerushalmi is putting the Shabbos of Parsha HaShavua in the same category as the laning of Yontif. Again, in the Bavli, what was it? Yontif is because that's the Indian of Yontif. That's the Indian of Yontif. And therefore, in the world of Yontif, like going back to the Arzurua for a second, if you miss the laning of Rosh Hashanah, no one is going to tell you, well, you got to make that up on Yom Kippur. But the laning of Rosh Hashanah is for Rosh Hashanah. It's not Rosh Hashanah anymore. It is what it is. That's how the Bavli presented it. That's Yontif. But Shabbos is the same cycle as Monday and Thursday, which is just to avoid 3 days without learning. But comes the Yerushalmi and says, no. The same takana that is for Yontif, of Yidaber Moshe es Ma'adei Hashem b'nei Yisrael, that's also the takana for Shabbos. According to the Yerushalmi, what the Yerushalmi is telling us is, no. It's not the pshat that you have to lay in all of Chumash throughout the year. And that's we're going to divide it up. And it works. That just happens to be that this week you're going to Parshas Noach. It doesn't have to be Parshas Noach, though. Comes the Yerushalmi and says, no. The takana of laning on Shabbos has to be seen in the same way as you're laning on Yontif. Just as when you're laning on Yontif, this is the Kriyas Hayom. When you're laning about Pesach, it's because it's Pesach, and that's the essentially this is the kriya of the day. That's how, says the Yerushalmi, you have to view the laning on Shabbos as well. That it's not just randomly and just happens to work out that this is Parshas Lech Lecha. No. This is Parshas Lech Lecha. This is the week of Parshas Lech Lecha. This is the Inyan. And because of this, the Yerushalmi, as we'll see, a number of our Achronim go with this Yerushalmi. And even if, going back to the situation of the Arzurua, so now let's say you have a community where Chas v'Shalom, they didn't have a laning on a Shabbos, they didn't have a Sefer Torah, let's say, again, they missed Parshas Noach, and now it's up to Parshas Lech Lecha, what do? So again, the Arzurua said, based on the Bavli, okay, so lane Parshas Noach now, it's an Afkamina, it doesn't make a difference, it's not like, but it's not Parshas Noach, there is never a Parshas Noach anyway, there's never a week of Parshas Noach B'etzem. What would the Achronim that go with the Yerushalmi say? So it's interesting. If you take a look at Maramukah number 2, so this is a tshuva from the Maram Mintz. Maram Mintz is one of the early Achronim / maybe late Rishonim from Ashkenaz. So he's also dealing with the situation of the Arzurua, a community that missed a laning of a particular week, and now it's the next week, and they have a Sefer Torah. So what do? So again, if this was the Arzurua talking, he would say, make it up. What's the difference? Let's say you missed Chas v'Shalom 10 weeks. Okay, so you lane 10 parshas the following. It doesn't make a difference. So says the Mar Mintz differently. The Mar Mintz says like this: Nearly, it's in Simon Pei. Nearly, it seems to me, Davka shnei starim yikru yachad. If the tzibur missed the parsha, then it's true they could make it up the following week. Because again, we agree, says the Mar Mintz, that over the course of the year we want to finish all of Chumash. But says the Mar Mintz, here's the condition. But this is only true if you missed one week. You're only at most able to lane 2 parshas on a Shabbos. Says Arzurua, Davka shnei starim yikru yachad. You could only make up 1 parsha. At most, on one Shabbos, you can only lane 2 parshas. In Mizbatel K'ras Shabbos, if you missed one particular Shabbos. Why? Because we do find in the regular cycle of laning that sometimes you have a double parsha. So since the concept of double parshas exists in the regular cycle, so fine, that much we'll be able to concede that we miss Parshas Noach, so lane Parshas Noach Lech Lecha. Why? Because anyway, there's a musig of a double parsha. But if you miss Bereishis and Noach, and now it's up to Lech Lecha, there's no such concept of having 3 parshas. So you can't do Bereishis, Noach, and Lech Lecha. So something's going to give. You're going to miss a parsha, this is the way it is. But you can't go back and make up more than 1 parsha. You can't have more than 2 parshas length on one Shabbos. He says in because we don't find anywhere such an idea. Shekar Gimel starts b'chad Shabbos to lane 3 parshas in one Shabbos. Where's the Maram Mintz coming from? Again, he's coming from the perspective of the Yerushalmi. In the world of the Bavli, there's no real inherent connection between what you're laning on that Shabbos and that Shabbos. So what's the difference? We don't find a double parsha. Who cares? We don't find three parshas. Yeah, because you never need three parshas. So in this case, you need to lane three parshas. Like, what's the inyan? Marim is coming from a basic assumption, which is that it's not Parshas Noach right now. Where it's not Parshas Bereishis right now. And when you're laning Parshas Noach on the week of Lech Lecha, that's be'etzem inappropriate. No, I have to do it because I want to make sure over the course of the year I lane all of Chumash. But only if we could wrap our brains around laning the wrong parsha of the week. So says the Maramitz, if it's just two parshas, okay, nishkaferlach, because we have such a thing. We have when you have a double parsha, you have vayakal pekude. So what is it? Is it vayakal or is it pekude? Okay, so it's both. So fine, we have such an idea of having one Shabbos that's really like two Shabbos. Fine, so that much we'll be willing to concede. But one Shabbos, if there's three parshas to it, I can't tolerate such a thing. But the Maramitz is coming from this assumption, which is that the week of the parsha is that week. And last week was, Parsha Shmais, and this week is Parsha Veira, and that's it. And that's what it is. You want to start laning last week's Parsha, this week's Parsha, it's already a doichik to do that, because be'etzim it's not the Parsha of the week. We'll be willing to allow it if it's at least two Parshas, because the concept, we already have concepts like this of there being one Shabbos with two Parshas. But more than that, we can't allow. And so this is where the Marin's is coming from, is that it's coming from this vantage point, that the Parsha of the week is be'etzim connected to that particular week, and that's coming based on the Yerushalmi. There's another interesting halacha that comes based on this from Maramuk number 3 from the Dogel Mervava, also one of the Achrayim. He talks about another aspect of that scenario. Let's say you have a community that doesn't have a Sefer Torah one Shabbos. So we're talking about, let's say they miss Parshas Noach, and then by Shabbos Lech Lecha they have a Sefer Torah again. But what if they get a Sefer Torah on Monday and Thursday of that week? Right, because that, so Monday and Thursday you already start to lane the Parsha of that Shabbos, right? So this scenario, they didn't have a Sefer Torah for Parshas Noach, and then Monday morning they get a Sefer Torah. So now they have to lane. But what do they lane? Should they lane the beginning of Parshas Noach, because that's the Shabbos that they missed? Or should they say, listen, Parshas Noach will make up on Shabbos, now we're going to lane the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha. Which one is it? So, again, according to Or Zerua, which is based in the Bavli, it doesn't make a difference. Whatever. Just pick one. It does. You flip a coin. The point is just to make sure there's no 3 days without learning. So pick something, whatever. Whatever it is. It doesn't really make much of a difference. Says the Dogel Mervava, what are you talking about? It makes a big difference. Says the Dogel Mervava, what you should do is, you missed Parshas Noach on that Shabbos, you got to Sefer Torah on Monday. The laning of Monday and Thursday is going to be the beginning of Parshas Lech Lecha. That's what you're going to lane Lech Lecha. You didn't lane Noach yet? Okay, you'll make it up on Shabbos. But today, which is Monday of Parshas Lech Lecha, you lane Parshas Lech Lecha laning. Says the Dogel Mervava, why? Because right now this man is for Parshas Lech Lecha. You didn't lane Parshas Noach? Okay, you'll make it up. But as far as right now, what you should do right now is your chiyuv of right now, and your chiyuv right now is Parshas Lech. So says our Dogel Mervava, that's the situation. They miss Parshas Noach on Shabbos, and then they get a Sefer Torah on Monday morning. They lay in the beginning of Lech Lecha. They missed Noach. Come Shabbos, they'll have two parshas, and they'll lay Noach and Lech Lecha. But right now, what's my chiyuv? My chiyuv is to lay the need of Lech Lecha. What you see from the Dogel Mervava is not only the Yerushalmi, but even an extension of Yerushalmi, right? The Dogel Mervava is saying that the laning, not only is the laning of Shabbosdik, that's the ending of the week, says the Dogel Mervava, but even the laning of Monday and Thursday is be'etzem. Right? Even laning of Monday and Thursday is be'etzem connected to the week. So in other words, again, according to the Bavli, Yontif on Yontif is be'etzem. But Shabbos and certainly Monday and Thursday, it's this arbitrary. It just happens to be. You need 3 days without learning, with laning, so fine. According, it comes to Yerushalmi, says, no. Just as Moshe was Masakin Yontif and Yontif, he's Masakin Shabbos and Shabbos. Ezra added to that Monday and Thursday and Friday as well. Minchan Shabbos as well. And comes the Dogel Mervava to explain, according to the Yerushalmi, it's not just, so that means, according to Yerushalmi, it's clear that not only is the laning of Yontif connected to Yontif, but the laning of that Shabbos is connected to Shabbos. Comes the Dogel Mervava and says, you should know, when Ezra was Masakin Monday and Thursday, that was also not that was also just an extension of what was already established by Moshe, which is that just like the laning of that Shabbos is Parshas Noach, be'etzem, so to the laning of that Monday and Thursday is Be'etzem Parshas Noach. And just like the laning of the next Shabbos is Parshas Lech Lecha, the laning of the Monday and Thursday preceding it is Be'etzem Parshas Lech Lecha. Therefore, says the Dogam Ravava, you didn't have a Sefer Torah on Shabbos by Parshas Noach, but now you have one on Monday morning of Lech Lecha week. Then you lay the Parsha that you're mechuyev to right now, which is Lech Lecha. You missed Noach. Okay, that you'll make up when you have to make it up. But something like the Dogam Ravava says, something that's Davar Shezman, is something that the Chiv is of right now. We don't push it aside to do something that was from last week. Right now, your Chiv is Lech Lecha. And this is all coming from this Yesayit, from the Yushalmi, that the laning of Shabbos on Shabbos, and by extension Monday and Thursday of the week, is Be'etzem. It's Be'etzem. Now, this Inyan from the Yushalmi is something we find in the Sarmar Kedusha as well, that every Shabbos and the week leading up to that Shabbos is flavored and sort of identified with that particular parsha. So again, it's something in halacha that we just seen from the Yushalmi and the Achrein and Maramintz, the Dogel Mervava, and it's something that we definitely find in the Tzemach Kedusha as well. One, by the way, just before we get to that though, if you take a look at Maramukah number 6, so there is one other additional nakuda that's interesting to make. If you take a look at Maramukah number 6, so this is from the Sefer HaEshkol in Hilchas Sefer Torah. So the Sefer HaEshkol is one of the Rishonim from Germany, and before the Rush, that time period of the Rush and so on. So if you take, it's a little bit of a mistake. You take a look at the second line in Maramukah number 6. So he brings down the following discussion that was asked to one of the Geonim. This is he's bringing down a tshuva from one of the Geonim. And here was the question that was posed to one of the Geonim. My time alay karin and musaf Shabbos, but kol Shabbos was Sefer Torah. Why is it that we do not have every single Shabbos an additional laning for the musaf of Shabbos, right? So for example, on Rosh Chodesh, we lane about the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh on Yontif. The mafter of Yontif is the Musaf of Yontif. So why don't we do that every week? Every Shabbos there was a Musaf. So why don't we have the Musaf laned on every Shabbos? That was the question that was posed, the Heishiv. And it's interesting. And the response of the Goyin in this tshuva was the following thing. And a little bit sharp. He said, once you start asking this type of question, why don't we lane this? Then you could keep on asking these types of questions. Then we could have a long discussion, says the guy. And why? Again, after the brackets. Because you're asking about Musaf. And this other person will ask another question. Lama azvu kriyas Seres Dibris. Let's lay in Seres Dibris every Shabbos. It's a Gavaldig Inyan. Shayu Oimrim B'Mikdash. Chazal saying the base of Mikdash, they would talk about that Seres Dibris every single day. V'zeh Yoimer, another person might ask another question. Lama azvu Ma'aseh Bereishis. Maybe every Shabbos we shall lay in the story of creation, because Shabbos is about creation. Kederach Shayu Oisim B'Mamadis, which is something else that we had in the base of Mikdash that they would lay about the Ma'aseh Bereishis. V'zeh Yoimer Lama Inon Okurm B'Sefer Torah B'Sheni B'Chamishi Parshas HaTamid. And then maybe you'll ask, maybe every single day we should have a laning, or at least Monday and Thursday, about the Parsha of the Tamid of the morning. In other words, in other words, I'm delegitimizing your question, basically, because you're asking why don't we lane the Musaf of Shabbos? Okay, why don't we do a Seres Dibris? It's a nice idea what you're suggesting, but there's a lot of nice ideas that we can suggest. Okay, Elamai, Chazal didn't want to do it. Finish. I don't like he didn't take the question so seriously. What's interesting is that the Eshkol quotes this, and then the Eshkol says, "But I take the question very seriously." And the Eshkol says, "But I'm going to give you an answer why Davka Musaf on Shabbos we don't lane." And says the Eshkol, Marmuk number 7, Musaf Shabbos. I'll tell you why we don't lane every week the Musaf of Shabbos. She'enu el shnei psukim. It's because the psukim that talk about the Musaf of Shabbos are just 2 psukim. And one of the rules of Kriyas Torah is we don't lane an aliyah if it's less than 3 psukim. That's why. What's the shiloh over here? Again, first he brings down a shuv from the Gain, and the Gain said, nothing doing. It's not important. Not a question. Says the Eshkol. It is. 1 second. Let me just. Yeah. Hi, Yaakov. Oh, perfect. Okay, shkay. Sorry about that. It's all sorts of balls that we're juggling over here. Okay, so that's what. So the Gain doesn't take it so seriously, but the Eshkol does. What's the issue? So here's the Nakuda. If you go with the Bavli, then the laning again, according to the Bavli, the laning of every Shabbos is not be'etzem the laning of that Shabbos. Happens to be this week is Noach. That's enough. It's just to make sure you get 3 days without to make sure there's 3 days with learning. So fine. So according to that, the guy makes a lot of sense. You're asking me that this week Lein Parsha is Noach. Oh, we should also learn the Musaf of Shabbos. It's a nice idea. Maybe we should also learn Naser Sedivers. Maybe we should also learn my celebrations. These are all very, very nice ideas. Okay, we don't. Gosh. But according to the Yerushalmi, no. The concept of laning on Shabbos is because this is the Parsha of Shabbos. This is the Parsha of Shabbos. This is Shabbos Parshas Lechacha. This is Shabbos Parshas Noach. This is Shabbos Parshas Chayei Sarah. And so according to that, it means that the laning of Shabbos is because this is the laning of Shabbos. Well, now the question is, well, I have a very, very more appropriate, straightforward laning of Shabbos, which is the Musaf of Shabbos. Because if you're laning on Shabbos just because we want to have laning, okay, so you could do a lot of things. But no. It says the Ashkel, according to Yerushalmi, we're laning on Shabbos because this is the Parsha of Shabbos. Well, I have another Parsha that's clearly the Parsha of Shabbos, which is the Musaf of Shabbos. So therefore, it's a good question. Specifically, I'm asking Sersa Dibras. That's random. But the Musaf of Shabbos is not random. That's the part that of all the Parshas in Chumash, that should be the most appropriate Parsha to be the Parsha of Shabbos. So why don't we lane that every week? Where does this? Who says we have to lane the Parsha of Shabbos? Every week is the Parsha of Shabbos. So now you have Parshas Musaf. Musaf is all the more so the Parsha of Shabbos. So to that, the Eshkol answers, it's only 2 psukim. But this is where it's coming from, based on the Yerushalmi. As I said, this idea in Halacha, that the Parsha of the week, that the Shabbos and that week is Mekusha to that Parsha, is something that we find in the Sarmak Hashem, goes back to the Arizal, right? That's what the Arizal said, right? That Shovavim, the avoid of the time, the energy of these weeks, is be'etzim related to the Parsha that we learn. This is a concept in Halacha that's based on the Yerushalmi. And this is what we find, let's say, for example, in Mark number 5 from the Pri Tzaddik, or Tzaddik, he writes this a lot in the Sefer on Chumash. This is just one example. In Parshas Vayechi, in the 5th piece, he says it openly. Shakol Shabbos yesh le Kedusha miyuchedes leisa Shabbos. Every Shabbos has its own Kedusha. The Kedusha, who Kedushas ha-Parsha, shekoirin the Parsha zu. And the Kedusha of that particular week is the Kedusha of that Parsha. And again, as I always try to show, that the concepts in Pnimius manifest themselves and reveal themselves in Halacha as well. And this is the idea. This concept that the Shabbos, the Kedusha of every Shabbos is be'etzim connected to the Kedusha of that Parsha is something that we see in Halacha as well, based on the Yerushalmi. And this is what's going on. Again, it's all, and this is the Yisoid that Shovavim is truly based on. Now, to explain a little bit, just mamish for a minute or so, why is it that this is a machlekes Bavli Yerushalmi? Right, that's what it boils down to, or at least you could definitely make the argument that in the Bavli, the parsha of the week is arbitrary. In the Yerushalmi, that's when it's mamish mekusher. So one way to think of it, just for a minute, is the following idea: is that Bavli Yerushalmi very often is broken down as chitzonius and pnimius. Bavli is the Torah of Golas. Yerushalmi is the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, the Torah of Gula. Golas already, by its very definition, means seeing things with the eyes of chitzonius, versus Yerushalmi, it's Gula, seeing things with the eyes of pnimius. What is Shabbos? What is Shabbos? So there's a way of looking at Shabbos chitzonius, and there's a way of looking at Shabbos and pnimius. Shabbos and chitzonius is a day that we rest to commemorate the fact that God created the world. That's what Shabbos is. It's a concept that theoretically God could have a shaykhis to. And they don't keep Shabbos, but it's a concept that they can wrap their heads around. There's a creator of the world. He created the world in 6 days. He rested in the 7th, so we do the same thing. Okay, fine. That's chitzonius. In pnimius, the meaning of Shabbos is Beini Uvim B'nai Yisrael. Shabbos is a day of yichud between Kudsha B'richu and Knesset Yisrael, between the Rebbeinu Shalom and the Jewish people. That's what Shabbos is. It's like I mentioned this before from the Orach Chaim. This is how he says it. He says that Shabbos, the Oisi L'Olam, for the whole world, superficially, Shabbos is the day that Hashem rested and we rest. But in Pnimius, between us and the Rebbeinu Shalom, it's Beini Uvim B'nai Yisrael. So and there is one one reality in creation that is the binder, that's the glue that unites the Rebbeinu Shalom and the Jewish people, and that is Torah itself. That's K'shavich V'Raisa of Yisrael, is Chad. And more than that, the creation itself that we're celebrating, so to speak, on Shabbos, in Pnimius, is Torah, right? Istachel B'Raisa, U'Baram. The Rebbeinu Shalom looked at the Torah, and the world emanates from that reality that's called Torah. So even in commemorating creation and recognizing the Boirei on Shabbos, in itself, there's a pneumistic way of looking at that, versus a chitzonius sticker. And in chitzonius, the Rebbeinu Shalom created heavens and earth and everything in between, and we're celebrating that, we're commemorating that. On Shabbos, but on Pnimius, on Shabbos, in Pnimius, what we're doing on Shabbos is establishing that all of Mitzias, all of creation, is just a union between God and the Jewish people, which is Torah. That's what we're saying on Shabbos. Therefore, when we talk about therefore, Dafka the Yerushalmi, which is the universe of Pnimius, sees Shabbos as be'etzim connected to the Torah that the community learns on that Shabbos. Because that's what Shabbos is. Shabbos is a day of recognizing Istakal B'Reis Bar Alma, that all of creation is nothing more than just a yichud between the Rebbeinu Shalom and the Jewish people through Torah. That's all creation is, and that's the type of creation we're commemorating on Shabbos. Therefore, in Halacha, the Yerushalmi, this concept of a pneumistic way of looking at Shabbos and how creation is redefined as nothing more as the expression of Torah and the union of the Jewish people and the Rebbeinu Shalom through Torah, that concept of what Shabbos is from the Yerushalmi reverberates itself in Halacha. That the essence of Shabbos is the Torah that the community learns on that Shabbos. And the Kedusha of that Shabbos is the Parsha that you learn. But in Bavli, which is Chitzonius, vis-a-vis Yerushalmi, then what Shabbos is that? We commemorate creation. What's creation? Mount Everest and helium atoms, helium molecules. Yeah, there's such a thing as Torah too, but what we're commemorating is creation. So what is the learning of Shabbos? Why is that Shabbos? So in Bavli, it's not. Right? The learning of Shabbos is a nice thing to learn. We don't want to go 3 days without learning, but it's not be'etzim Shabbos. According to Yerushalmi, that is Shabbos is seeing reality as Torah, and therefore in Halacha, the learning of Shabbos is the bechina of Shabbos itself. And this is what's going on. Again, Dafka Arizal, who introduces this concept to the whole world in the bechina Shovavim, and therefore being makash ourselves and sort of living with the Parsha is itself a bechina of pnimius, because you're establishing that Shabbos be'etzem, commemorating creation, is really just a day to realign ourselves and to realize that what is creation? Nothing more than a physical manifestation of Beini Uvim B'nai Yisrael, which is through Torah itself. And that's what creation is, that's what reality is, and that's the premise of Yerushalmi. And you see that in Halacha, that the Parshas HaShavua is be'etzem, the meaning of that Shabbos. Okay? No, we should be zeicha to never miss a Parsha. That's number one, right? We shouldn't have to fall into these shilas of Zeruah, Ma'amar, and Mitz, and so on. And we should be zeicha to makasher ourselves to Shabbos in a real way, in a deep way, and makasher ourselves to Torah Kedusha, through which we can makasher ourselves to Bari Olam. And we should be zeicha through that to have a gula shleim v'hamitis v'meher v'meinu amen.